Steve. How's it going?
Great, Scott. Good to be with you. Looking forward to our conversation here.
I've been looking forward to this all day because I felt like when I read your bio, I was reading my own bio in many ways. And that experience of quote unquote, living the good life, the American dream, having the startup success, to feeling this bigger calling on your heart that is required for the greatest good and for your own soul's journey. In my own experience, at least, it's a mirror to something that I have been going through. And so maybe to give some context to everybody listening, let's talk about what you were doing in your life when all of this came to be, and maybe we can start there.
You bet. Yeah, great. So, and of course, the context, what this comes out of, I think you know of this book that just came out, A New Universal Dream. It's the 50 plus year true story of me as this kid growing up with a divorced single mom, 6 sibling, in a very normal, small, actually, home. And then 11 years later, as I graduated from college, finding myself at the center of wealth creation in Silicon Valley, just because I was in the right place at the right time, starting 2 organizations that grew quite rapidly. And then being called to conscious living and selling my interests in these businesses, leaving the business organization I was part of, and helping Neale Donald Walsch, who wrote the Conversations with God series, launch a global undertaking called Humanities Team, a 501c3 nonprofit, which we launched a little over 20 years ago. So the 50-year journey's been quite an adventure. I'm really, I would say where I am living the good life is right now. Conscious living.
Yep.
This is the thing. In any part of the planet, any region of the world, in any community, in any home, we can live this. The American dream thing. A lot of people don't have an opportunity to live that. The private jets, the private ski areas, all of that luxury living, and it was good for me to go to live those chapters, because it helped me to see that was not actually the ladder that I wanted to climb, that I was being called to something much bigger, much more important, and much more satisfying. And that's, I know we'll be talking, deeper about all of this, the business side of it and the conscious living side.
I think one of the amazing things about this journey is that just to give everybody context, it sounds like you had 2 businesses that were $75 million businesses, Inc. 500 fastest growing companies, when all this came into your life. And what I experienced is that experience was almost a requisite context to be able to, have that own understanding of yourself, that wasn't actually what was going to ultimately fulfill you to the degree, but also to be able to empathize and understand and meet that audience, that experience kind of uniquely positions you to do that in a way that maybe some guy who's, lived his whole life in an ashram would not be able to do. I don't know if you felt that way, but I certainly did.
For sure. I mean, for sure. It was a gymnasium, a skills gymnasium there in Silicon Valley. All the things I was with IBM in the 80s, and I was on their executive resources path. And then I left to start my first company there in January 1990. And it was the internet was born, they say 92 is kind of the year they put on it. And we were in digital communications. We were helping companies, mostly larger companies, design and implement their global digital systems across all of their campuses and things. And we knew a little more about that than everybody else, coming out of IBM, and my partner, who was coming out of an entrepreneurial firm in Plano, Texas. We knew how to design these networks And we were there in Silicon Valley as the newest technology was coming out, routers and bridges and all of these kinds of arcane technologies. So we just rode this huge wave. We went from two guys in a executive suite with used furniture in South San Francisco, which was inexpensive at that time, to a $75 million company in 10 years, over 175 people, sold it to NEC. And then inside of that company, that first company, we then birthed a second company that was all consulting, raised a whole bunch of money in that one, and did the venture capital thing, brought in a CEO. I was the executive chairman. And that didn't work out, as many of these don't, where you bring in a CEO, you can get into big vision differences, value differences, execution differences, and that we ran into all of that. So we were able to grow that second company to 75 million in revenue in 2 years, and it should have gone big after that. But the whole plan where we had venture capital assist us in recruiting a CEO and fast recruiting our whole C-suite team just didn't make sense for us. So that didn't work. But as well, in that time frame, I was well down this path here that I'm calling conscious journey, where we go through an awakening, really, where we understand, we're looking at the latest science here now at mystical experiences go back into like 550 BCE, Plato, Hippocrates, who said there's no such thing as consciousness in the plural. So it means that consciousness is in the singular. So, which is again what scientists are affirming now. If your viewers are following the latest science, even the Nobel Prize for Physics here in October last year, for these three researchers that were looking at entanglement. And when you look up the definition of entanglement, it says you basically have two things that can be on completely different sides of the universe with no physical connection whatsoever that are deeply affecting each other. So, this isn't the science we grew up with in high school, college, etc. It's the new science. It's primarily quantum physics. That's really, which was what Einstein was working on, his unified field theory, at the time of his passing, where he was looking to unify all scales, from quantum scales, protons, atoms, to cosmological objects, galaxies, and everything in between, physical and non-physical. He didn't get there in his lifetime, but you've got scientists getting there now that are Nassim Haramein with his organization, and other scientists as well that are bringing forward that research, that are saying, what we've all maybe felt into, certainly the mystics did as well back in these earlier days, that there's something, we're not just these physical bodies that we were taught going through school, growing up, we are physical bodies, but we're much more than that. It's actually a spiritual universe. And that means then there's a vibrational, if we look, there's a vertical setting for our vibrational self as spiritual beings. And we set that by the life that we choose, and whether we follow our soul's calling, and whether we have a daily practice and things. So
it's a profound experience there's the intellectual, you can read about these things, then there's the experiential knowledge that comes through experiencing that. And it's incredibly profound. And once you see it, you can't look away from it. And I think one of the things I was curious to ask you is, you're kind of going through this experience of running companies. What was the big inflection point for you where you realized that maybe this type of work and experience had to be more than something you did with closed doors at night when you're outside the office?
Well, the second company, we grew it to over 750 people. I mentioned 75 million in 2 years. So, and we venture backed it. We raised almost $200 million for this one. It's called Netigy. Fast Company and other magazines picked this thing up as we were growing it, scaling it. So I was sitting next to the CEO that we'd recruited in, and watching him as we'd recruited this team in, and over 750 people, and I realized I could do all of the stuff that he was doing, and I could do it better. You know, I was like, why did I hire this guy who's not in, doesn't share my values? He doesn't have the vision. As there were challenges there in the early years, he said, "Hey, let's try and sell it." You know, again, I tell all of the story in my book, and I said, "Why? You know, we can't, like, this company needs some attention. We need to put some fires out. We don't want to try and sell this thing here now." And we didn't see eye to eye, and that's a problem. You know, when you've got a CEO and a chairman that aren't in vision alignment, that's a real problem. But your question was, so where did I decide that I wanted to leave this, you know, and do something different? So there was a confluence of things going on. On the one hand, I had gone from this guy, middle kid in a family in a small home growing up on the East Coast, to finding myself there at the center of wealth creation in Silicon Valley, in these organizations, two of them that are scaling rapidly. And I was like, wow, you know, I can do this, and it's fun, actually. You know, I have the skills to do this. As entrepreneurs, of course, you're an entrepreneur too, Scott. I know many of your viewers are as well. You have to kind of go through the learning thing where you realize you are this. You know, you have these skills. You can do it. You're having fun doing it. So I did go through all of that process in the 90s, and it was neat. But at the same time, this personal awakening thing was happening, where I was coming to understand who I really am, that I'm part of this universal consciousness, you know, that animates all of life. That's one way of describing this deeply interdependent universe. So that was going on, and I was deepening my own understanding of that, deepening my own desire to live into it. So, and then there was a collision of these two things, where I'm like, I can do this, and it's fun, but there's something much more important that I'm being called to. And at the end of my life, I know I'm going to be very unhappy if I continue to do the serial entrepreneur thing. And, you know, when I left that second company, one of the venture guys on my board comes to me and says, wow, you know, you've had one successful one, this other one didn't work, but you learned tons, and let's put you on some boards, you know, which is what happens, right? As entrepreneurs, we're invited on boards and things. And I said, you know, hey, I'm being called to do something different. And I'm not good at just kind of having one foot in the world over here, just doing entrepreneur stuff, and another foot in this consciousness raising area. I'm a guy that's got to be all in, and that's how I do it well. And I'm going to go all in over on the consciousness raising side. So I did sell everything, severed all the ties, even moved my family to Boulder, Colorado, where I'm based now, from Silicon Valley. And it's been, you know, it's the best decision that I ever made.
Did you experience any doubts or internal conflicts walking away from all that? Because, you know, I know you've talked about real gold and fool's gold, and I imagine lots of people around you were pretty astonished that you were walking away from this kind of illustrious career and things that we hold up on such esteem in our society.
Yeah. So this is part of the reason I wrote the book, was to just get people's legs strong that are in the technology area, or professionals that are finding a similar calling. There's these deeper values are calling them to do the same thing, to leave and to go do something else, where they're putting their skills to good use. And it was very challenging. I had some of these professionals I was sharing with you coming on the program. You know, I had people like Gavin Newsom and others that were in my business chapter there in Silicon Valley. And they were saying, Steve, God, you're good at this stuff. Why are you, you know, you got a lottery ticket and you just put a lighter to it. You're burning your lottery ticket, you know? And like, why do you want to do that, man? I had my older brother, loves me dearly, my family. He flew out and said, hey, you know, okay, I'm with you. The world needs, we need to make some adjustments. But what can one guy do, Steve? I mean, do you really want to just jump off that cliff? So I did go through all of that, but on a part of the reason that I think I've been successful doing the things that I've done, and in the nonprofit world now, we're just lighting it up in this whole area of consciousness raising with our streaming platform. But so I've continued that success into the nonprofit world, is I have been able to tune out that worldly noise around me, where good friends and family are saying, "Don't do it. You're burning your lottery ticket," and instead listen to that still small voice.
Yeah.
That you can call it a lot of things: conscience, still small voice, my soul's journey, but really listening, tuning into it, and saying, hey, thank you. I know you love me. I know that's why you're sharing. Don't do it. And so I appreciate you taking the time here to talk to me, but I'm going to go do this. It's what I'm being called to. And I think I've got a great future out ahead. So unfortunately, I had a wife that was able to go along with me. I don't know how many wives in Silicon Valley would be willing to leave that whole lifestyle. Because I went to Stephanie and I said, Stephanie, I don't know if I'll ever earn another paycheck for the rest of my life. I was pretty young, to be saying that. And she said, hey, well, let's do it. Let's get started. So, the thing is it does work out. So let me just bring that in. And Scott, I know you would bring that in too. If you follow this still small voice, if you tune out this worldly noise, if you're called to something, where you're given a vision, you're always given provision to go with the vision. So if you follow that, you will indeed go to this incredible place in life where, such as what I've come to, Scott, I think that you've come to with your program, these other things that you're doing, where we're out helping people in the world. And in a sense, we kind of find what we were looking for when we were climbing that ladder as entrepreneurs. We never quite got there. I think it's sort of a mirage, that oasis just keeps moving on you in the American dream thing. But man, you find it, taste it, it's here, it's delicious. And you're drinking it all day long, in this conscious living thing. It's
so well said. And I would agree that, and I've heard you use this phrase before, when you are in integrity with your soul, your true self, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, it's almost like this intelligent orchestration in reality starts to come online and support you in unforeseen ways. And it's my experience also that when you are out of alignment with that, it's actually going to be perhaps some obstacles that come in your way. Things are more difficult than they need to be because, that part of self that exists on a higher reality, higher plane is trying to kind of guide us back to what we came here to do. And I know personally, I heard you say once in an interview, like, I just started. If people worried I was ending my life, I actually just was starting my life once I finally discovered this. I very much feel the same way, where I was like, wow, like all of that was merely a preparation for this service that I came here to do, that I'm actually starting to remember and download, that I could not see before.
Yeah, nicely said. So, and it's all true. And I think, and the universe doesn't play favorites. It doesn't. I was not played as a favorite. You're not being played as a favorite. If we listen to that still small voice, and we follow it, and that means, I'm going to call it your soul's journey here, where we follow it. It's a very pure thing, and it's about creating better homes, better communities, a better world, and where we stay in alignment with that, this thing that we've heard, give unto the kingdom and all things are given unto you, it happens to you. And that's right. So as many riches as I was able to create there in Silicon Valley, I mean, my life is just unbelievable. They say you make your bed in life and, enjoy it. Man, I'll tell you, I couldn't be enjoying my bed anymore if I tried. Not that I don't have challenges, because I do, but to be able to do what I'm doing now, where in Humanities Team, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, 20 years old. We've got the strongest streaming platform, conscious streaming platform in the whole world. So, and about half of our subscribers are outside of the country, half are in the U.S. We have hundreds of these transformational education programs with the leaders in this transformational education area. So the scientists like the Greg Bradens and Nassim Harrimans and Lynn McTaggarts and Bruce Liptons and others. And then the spiritual leaders, Michael Beckwith, Neale Donald Walsch, many others, Ken Wilber in philosophy, and then embodied practices. And again, there are hundreds of these programs. So now I'm helping other people to become educated so they can go higher to this higher level in their own consciousness, where they're enjoying the fruit of their life, such as what you and I are describing. And man, it just doesn't get better than that, where I can be helping people all over the world, including, like, we're talking to a tech audience. One of the things we were discussing coming on is, there's a lot of concern that in our tech world, that can I do this? Can I leave it? Or am I going to just end up in a cave somewhere, and everything's going to crash around me? And the fantastic thing is when we follow this, I said, if you have a vision, you're always given provision. Man, it works out. It does work out.
That's right.
We're going to be led to higher ground and a more fulfilling life than we ever had, if we have the courage to follow this journey that we're called to.
I so agree. And I think this is such a critical point, because a lot of people, and look, I experienced this myself, are worried that they have to give something up. There's a perception of polarity that you can't have a nice house and be deeply passionate about your spirituality and consciousness, or have a great career, or have a family. And there's all of these kind of conditioned archetypes around what that means that unfortunately people have programmed. And I think, one of the reasons why your story is so awesome and I think resonant to this audience is that you really can have your cake and eat it too. And actually, like, the cake is the best cake you ever had relative to the other options when you do this. And part of that kind of both and mindset, I think, is also a byproduct of what happens when consciousness expands. You kind of start to move beyond the black and whites and the this or that's, and figure out how to integrate it all.
Yeah, exactly. When I moved to Boulder, my wife and I looked for about a year, and we ended up in this home here in North Boulder that, honest to God, we have the prettiest view in all of North Boulder from our home. We're of the Flatirons, and we're right on the edge here of there's Boulder's actually, there's 10 miles from the south side to the north side, and then it's a floodplain in between. And the city of Boulder is in the middle of that floodplain. It was dammed long ago, so you don't have to worry about flooding there any longer. But we're on that north edge that looks straight out over the city and the Flatirons, and the house itself is amazing. And that's its own. We don't have time to sort of talk that story, what happened, how we ended up in this house. But it's one of the many miracles where when we were moving here, everything worked. The agent said, "Oh, that's way below the price we want, but okay." And we bought the house. Here we are 16 years later. Humanities Team is headquartered here. The whole bottom floor of this house is our studios and a couple of our offices. So that's the whole, give unto the kingdom, and all things are given unto you. And, let me say this too. This may, be controversial, but I do believe actually right now that it's not just like my calling or your calling, Scott. It's actually our calling. I believe the 8 billion people on this planet actually are being called to this right now. Because this whole, when we talk about a unified field, which means that there's a basic oneness, or you could call it this universal consciousness animating all of life. that means that we're all, you could say cells in the body of not only this world, but the universe around us. That's what a unified field is. So there are 37 trillion cells in a body. We're actually one of 8 billion cells when we talk about humankind here on the earth. And as we know right now, there's a great deal of anxiety, disempowerment, even depression. Why? Because people, in many cases, aren't living their deeper values. And the drumbeat of extreme weather, climate change, Ukraine war, other injustices and things, that drumbeat's getting louder, by the month, if not by the week or by the day. That's what happens when a body gets ill or experiences dis-ease, is that this drumbeat thing will happen, where the world around you is reflecting this whole, it's macrocosm, microcosm. As
That's right.
we're unhealthy and unconscious, the world around us is going to be unhealthy. But the opposite, fortunately, is true. And as more of us are awakening and living into this, thing where there's more compassion, we feel our connection, we're working to make a better world, better homes, better communities. There's the Malcolm Gladwell tipping point thing, the 8% ish, where all of a sudden the world around us starts to reflect this new health and well-being. And that's what my work is now in Humanities Team. It's about elevating consciousness, really understanding who we are as we live into this body, as one of the trillion cells here in the universe, and just helping to create health and well-being in families, communities, in the world, and understanding, just having an understanding of who we really are and what our true invitation in life was, not the things that we grew up with, just the physical, the science that we grew up with was just the physical body, which is all true. A physical body that goes to dust and bones 6 feet under at the end of our physical life. It's true. But with unified field research, that's now the least important thing that we understand, because we understand there's a whole non-physical realm as well, the afterlife that's here. And in this consciousness work that I do, I work with many of the near-death experience people. So like, for example, Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven. A lot of people have read his book.
Is he the University of Virginia?
Yeah, exactly.
Guy?
Charlottesville, lives down there. And Suzanne Giesman and James Van Praagh, the mediums that are connecting you with the afterlife, actually training you to connect with the afterlife. I regularly connect with my sister who passed, my dad. So these all sound kind of woo-woo to people that haven't really done the research, haven't really participated in these educational programs and things. But I can assure you, if you were in my chair and you were working with these people all day long the way I do, in your home just like mine, we don't even talk about death. It's like, are you kidding me? There's no such thing as death. I mean, that could sound very strange to some of your viewers, but there's so many of these leaders in near-death experience, so many of these leaders in mediumship, and now science is coming in saying, no, there's a whole non-physical realm too, and it's non-dual, so science is coming in and supporting all of this as well.
Yeah. And I think, for a while, I personally was like, man, like this, like science worship is so unfortunate, because there's clearly an experiential realm that many people are in touch with, that we've been in touch with for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, right? That kind of, don't make the explanatory component really necessary. But I have increasingly come around to the idea that, like, in order to get people to that explanatory or to that experiential realm, like a lot of people do need some explanation, and it is part of this whole evolution thing, where it's like part of there's experiencing, and then it's the kind of normalizing of the experience through the mechanisms of explanation that we have with science. And, I'm excited. I'm very excited for the day where, the energy bodies and the different, our ability to kind of measure these concepts like frequencies, and it's all going to happen, it's inevitable.
Yeah. And even, there's a lot of science around now. We're actually rounding up that science because we're a nonprofit. We're raising a lot of funding right now to support our initiative called Changing Humanity's Future, which is all about just supporting conscious living all over the planet. We've got this, as I've mentioned, a streaming platform. It's called Humanities Stream Plus. And as a nonprofit, we're always looking to get that subscription price down, the monthly price down, the annual price down. It's now at $3.99 a year, $39.99 a month. But like Tom's Shoes, we have the 1 for 1. So we give away, one free subscription for every paid subscription. And as we're raising money, we're in over 65 countries right now, and we're going to put budget out there to all of our country coordinators to go into libraries, schools with the platform, give it away, keep bringing that price down, because education really is the key when we talk about this whole conscious living thing, a unified field theory, and how we live into that. It's a journey, and it actually has no ending point. In my understanding, we can deepen into this journey back to like 2,000 years ago. What was experienced in were the greatest miracles that known to mankind were occurring. That was a deeply conscious being. So
That's right.
we all start somewhere, and then we journey somewhere. But we can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's our whole thing is providing education, affordable education in this area of consciousness raising. So where you can go in and study all the science that we're talking about here, study the spiritual dimensions. Neale Donald Walsch and I, who's the other founder of Humanities Team, he's the guy that wrote the 9 Conversations with God books. We just created a new masterclass. At first, a free program called Accelerating Your Conscious Evolution. And it's free, it's an hour long. And then we created a 16-module masterclass. Now, we usually charge $300, $299 for these, and then the streaming platform is $399. But for the first time ever, we put a name your own price on this, where you can come in to our site now with no money, with $0, and download the entire masterclass of 16 modules. Neale and I worked over 6 months on this. The reason that we're letting people name their own price up to and including $0 is because what we're talking about is so important. I was bringing in this supposition earlier that I think the whole planet is being called now to take better care, steward the earth, take better care of humanity, make life the highest priority instead of, top line and bottom line. So we're putting our money where our mouth is and saying, okay, here's our investment. If we're inviting people to pay for it too, to support our work. But if you don't have budget, then that's okay. Then just say you've got $0 and go through this program. And we rounded up all of the science here of this whole oneness thing, of conscious living, in practical ways. Not we're having to kind of fly high here right now because of the time that we've got. But we get down into daily living of, so what is this like, and where's it working, and what are the challenges, and what are metaphors we can use for this? Like one metaphor I use is, it's like floating on a raft up above the roller coaster of unconscious living, where you have good days and bad days, extreme challenges where you don't feel good, and then you do feel good. It's very roller coastery. This was my life and most of our lives growing up. As we come into this conscious living thing, again, it's not that our challenges go away, but it's almost like we're floating on a raft up above that, because we're following our soul's calling. We're helping. We're in our living as our bigger self, not our smaller self. It's not so much the cell, my body of Steve Farrell. It's the world around me that's the bigger issue. And even as I self-identify, it's the world around me that is what's most important, living as my bigger self, not just me, Steve Farrell, and the stuff I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
That's beautiful. And yeah, I was going to ask you kind of like how you define, I know there's a vision for conscious living by 2040. And I was going to ask you, how do you define conscious living that you're driving towards with Humanities Team and some of the other organizations that you mentioned? And what do you perceive as the way that we get there?
So it actually is really distills down to something very simple. And actually Albert Einstein just put his finger on this 102 years ago. I mean, so let me bring in a few Albert Einstein quotes, and you can Google these. So one was in 1921, so 102 years ago. He said, the greatest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation. So, and again, he was in quantum physics. Quantum physics is where we're down at an atom and proton level, where we're looking at these deeper connections in an invisible realm. So, and then he went on to share a longer quote that relates to this, and it's not too long, so I'll read it real quick. It says, he said, a human being is a part of a whole called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires for a few persons nearest us. He says our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And then I'll just read one other real short quote. He says, no problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness that created it.
That's
so
right.
One of the things we keep coming back to is elevating consciousness, because as we talk about climate change or wars or injustice and things, where we're in this consciousness of separation, we can't really solve these problems well. So this whole journey to conscious living it's actually really simple. It's exactly what he said over 100 years ago. It's just realizing, my God, my eyes are deceiving me. There's an optical delusion that everything is separate, and I'm just this little body called Steve Farrell. I'm going to put fence posts around me and my wife and my kids, which is kind of how it works when we're unconscious of, I don't like what's out in the world, but who can do much about it? I'm just going to, live a nice life with my wife and my kids. Now, so in conscious living, we're seeing exactly what this esteemed scientist shared, that we're deeply connected, that our larger self, our true self, you could say, is this whole universe around us. Again, that's what my book is called, A New Universal Dream, living into this whole oneness thing, this deeply interconnected and interdependent world, where we're living into this notion that our bigger self is just like, I'm a cell in this much larger body of earth and universe around me. And I mentioned I worked with near-death experience. I work with mediums all day long. I can assure you, when at the end of this life, when you go through your life review and then you go into the afterlife, that's what you live in. You're in the non-physical realm. That's the container that we live in. And we're all going there. There is no other. It's just, we go back and forth between the physical realm and the non-physical realm. And it's pure love in that non-physical realm. That's where we go. So the idea then is, how do we, in this physical realm, how do we live into ultimate reality, where we see these connections and things? So the simplicity of this, you could call it big lift of, in 17 years, making conscious living pervasive worldwide. The simplicity of it is just people even studying the science now that's out, that's saying, hey, our eyes are deceiving us. What Einstein was saying so many years ago is true. And who wants to walk around in some delusion, their whole life, only to go into the afterlife and realize, oh my God, my ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. It was this optical delusion I was living into my whole life. So our work is just kind of opening people's eyes, and we have, that's why we have hundreds of programs, because we don't want to go to dogma of, well, let's just look at this scientist way or this spiritual leader, or we have hundreds of them. I mean, if you don't like this spiritual leader, go through this other class. You don't like this scientist, look at this other scientist. You don't like this embodied practice, try that. They all are pathways to the very same mountaintop that we call conscious living, this oneness thing where we're not living in separation anymore.
It's beautiful. And, such an important point, I think, that like for the number of unique souls on the planet, there's the number of unique paths to get to the same fundamental truth, which is we are all one. And I know it can be quite confusing based on language to hear things like this is an illusion, because obviously, this feels very real. But I think the way that I guess, interpreted those quotes is there is this, and then there is something more deeper, fundamental, right? It is more encompassing. We're seeing a sliver of what is. And, I just say that not to deny what anyone is experiencing if they're like, well, I don't feel connected and the person next to me is pissing me off right now. But hopefully lots of the things that you're putting out into the world, giving people tools to expand that lens of experience. One question.
I think ultimately what this is about is just finding that fulfilling life, Scott, and as I know, we've been both fortunate. We've been the successful entrepreneur. I'm sure there are many listening now. Sure, it's fulfilling on many levels. It's provided things in our lives, but it isn't the ultimate destination. That's why we've left it, because we knew there was something more. There's a more fulfilling way to live our life. There's more meaning. There's more purpose. I can live into my deeper values. Even I do programs like this, and I've had sometimes they'll say, well, let's open it up to listeners, and we'll have listeners come in with questions and things. One time a guy was saying that he was in a big forum and talking about AI, and somebody shut his didn't agree with him, and they shut down the whole audio system and made him look kind of silly standing there where all the audio had gone down. And he talked about how he really went off on this other person. And I was saying, well, it's not my job to sit here, and judge anybody. That's the part of the point of this is we're not judgmental, that I'm not trying to tell somebody they did the right thing or the wrong thing. We all have to make that decision ourselves. But if we look back through the history of time, look at what Buddha and Jesus, they both said exactly the same thing here. They actually used the term oneness as well. But they turn the other cheek was what one said. And the other one said, give them all of your money, all of your treasure. It was the same thing of just kind of see deeper into the person that's offending you, because if you really, which is part of what we do when we live consciously, is we start seeing deeper into the other person and understanding where they're really going off on us. There's something, they're triggered, there's some pain there that's substantial. That's why they're going off. And which is why this beautiful thing that only, when we reach mastery can we generally do, but where you do turn the other cheek and say, I see, you're pained. And that's why you're going off on me, and we're not just coming back because part of when we talk about conscious living here in the US, this polarity is so substantial right now with the red state and blue state. And the way we're going to heal that is by stepping out of that judgmental role of, you're wrong and I'm right. And we want to heal the polarity. We don't want to make it worse.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, one thing that can come up for a lot of people is you mentioned right now we're being called as a planet and, kind of grand organism to evolve. And I think a lot of people can look at these polarities and extreme macrocosms that exist and go, how could that be true? Right? Like it seems like people are at each other's throats more than ever. And I would be curious to get your perspective on how you would respond to that in light of what's going on.
So what we're focusing on is uniting humanity, all of humanity, all 8 billion people here. So where we step out of judgment, it's not our role to judge, We were put here. Those of us that are entrepreneurs, as we mentioned, we were like in a gym where we developed all these skills. That's what entrepreneurs are. We have these incredible skills with vision, recruiting, creating cultures, all of these things. We were put here to put those skills to use right now. And as we're on this conscious journey, these are badly needed skills. And as entrepreneurs, we have them. So, boy, we're in position to just create incredible reach and impact with those skills. And our whole thing is uniting humanity. I mean, what a blast, to look out at all this polarity and with the judgment, all of that. And our team coming from the place of, the Martin Luther King quote that darkness can't heal darkness. Only light can do that. Right. Mm-hmm. So, we don't have to be perfect. All of us, I'm not perfect. I'm not even excellent all the time, but I do my best and just do my best to bring people together, to say, because even people that I have my political preferences and I know those that have these very opposite political preferences, but, they've suffered a lot of pain in their life as I have. We can come together around certain things, they've raised kids. They've run into challenges, financial, raising kids, health. We can find common ground, in huge challenges that we've had. So let's do that. Let's find common ground. Let's look at the science that says, my God, that you're actually a part of me. I mean, it's beyond the golden rule of do unto the other as you would have them do unto you. This is saying like all there is we're all part of each other. There are points of presence as we look with new eyes out in the world when we're conscious. It's like, it's not a separated state thing. Everything is a point of presence, including the earth itself. So it's seeing different. It's taking these skills that we have as entrepreneurs and putting them to incredible use. And how cool is that if we can unite humanity, and then lead humanity to this place where there is conscious living and where future generations get to enjoy the level of physicality that we have on the earth, where we went camping and surfing and all these cool things because the weather supported it, where we turn that dial back and we create an incredible level of physicality for future generations, uniting humanity to do that. I mean, to me, there's nothing more exciting than talking about something like that.
It's a very inspiring vision, and one that I know many people listening to this conversation and myself seek to contribute. And one question I wanted to ask for you is there's a lot of people that might be listening to this and they're on the sidelines and they feel like they want to grab an oar and help row in that direction, but they aren't necessarily sure what form that might manifest. And I'd be curious if you have any advice for those people that are seekers and they feel this calling and they're not really sure what the next step should be or what to do.
Yeah, so I'd recommend 3 things to jump in, to put that oar in the water. The first one is educate. So education, probably most of the people here have some familiarity with it. This is why they're listening to the program. They gravitate to the kinds of things we're talking about, Scott, because of who you are and the program you've created. But I'm guessing as well, we've covered things that are also out on the edge where there's not as much familiarity. And educate yourself. HumanitiesTeam.org, that's with a Y. HumanitiesTeam.org is our 501c3 nonprofit. There are tons of free programs. It's at the top. It says programs. Pull down the navigation. It says free programs. Go into all the free programs, including all the science-based free programs. I mentioned this new program that we just created called Accelerating Your Conscious Evolution. Go take it. This masterclass that can be free, called The Art and Science of Living Consciously. Jump in, take it. There's no price point to hold you back. So educate is the first one. Now, part of educating then is understanding we have to have a daily practice, and there are things like holistic livings that go beyond just the daily practice is prayer or meditation or walking in nature or just creating silence. There are different ways in our daily practice that we can commune with one in the world around us. So And a lot of people probably here are practicing mindfulness already. It's pretty prevalent out there. So that's one of the forms of daily practice. So education is the first step. The second one is to embody and express then these teachings. What good is it to like see the fruit on the table that we're talking about, where you've educated, you've got the awareness now, but you haven't eaten the fruit? It's like, that's not fun. So once we educate and understand it, and you take it in internally to your own inner sanctuary, so to speak, and sit with it, and where you find it to be true, why would you not want to embody, and express that truth? So that's the second step, is embodying and expressing these realities, so that the things we're talking about aren't just our experience, it's your experience. You're feeling these things yourself, and in your home with your partner, and in your workplace, you're saying, wow, there's some pretty cool stuff I'm experiencing. So that's the second step. And the third is what, Scott, you and I are doing now, engaging others. So this work has been important back to 550 BCE, when you had people like Plato and Hippocrates devote their professional life to it. Many, many others since then. It's not only important now, it's urgent now. It's urgent that, because again, the world around us, almost everybody's going to say they're not real happy with the state of affairs in our world. There are challenges that they're looking at, and even more so where you have kids. And I think this drumbeat seems to be getting quite loud, as I mentioned, by the month. So it's not only important, it's urgent, and where we invite others to it, and where other people experience it and find it to be delicious the way we're describing it, then this thing spreads, it becomes contagious. And then we do make conscious living pervasive worldwide by 2040, in 17 years. And can you imagine, leaving the planet where we devoted our life to becoming part of this catalyst for healing and remedy that is creating this new way of living on the earth, where people are much more fulfilled, and businesses become quite different. Conscious business is very healthy, takes us in a different direction than conventional business, and all of the other things that occur that are part of living consciously, that just make it individually and collectively so delicious.
I think that's really great advice. And, what I would also just comment is that when you do the things that Steve mentioned, and you start to remove the layers that have been essentially obstructing what has always been there, the way that you are best positioned to serve will become increasingly obvious. The formation of all the gymnasium skills will start to click in terms of how this fits into how you can bring forth your own unique contribution. And I don't know that it's an intellectual exercise. It's almost more of an emergent experience, and you'll know it when you see it. Kind of like when you meet someone that you love, your partner, or you find the perfect job. You'll know it when you see it. So there's a lot of trust there.
You're right on target. It's you absolutely know it, and these are great examples. You meet your partner, the home that you live in, the community you were guided to. These kinds of signs are all over the path that we're called to, and we're all called to something different. Mine was to help start Humanities Team and with these educational programs and so on. But we all are called to our own station in life, and then we're given the provision to support that calling. It's a blast, and again, in today's world, where they call it sometimes the Great Resignation and all these things, where post-COVID, people are like, geez, is this all there is to life? Hey, we're talking about here all the things that there are to life that go way beyond what many people are experiencing today.
Well, you are an inspiration, Steve, and all of the work that you're doing at Humanities Team is exactly what it sounds like. It's a service to humanity. And so I'm very grateful for you, for this conversation that we've had, for everything that your team is doing. It's very inspiring and is making an impact. So thank you. And thank you to everybody who listened today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Scott. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And for everyone that's interested in learning more about Humanities Team, Steve, you mentioned the Changing the Humanities Future project. Did I word that right?
Yes. So you can go to changinghumanity'sfuture.org or .com, and that whole initiative is there. You can also go to a newuniversaldream.com, and it talks a little bit about this true story, this 50-year journey where my life and starting Humanities Team, growing into what it is. The book is like now on Amazon, $14.50 or something. And on that site, we give you the first 4 chapters for free. And I have another masterclass called Conscious Leadership, and where you enter your receipt number for the roughly $15, we give you that other masterclass for free, which is a $300 value. So kind of a cool deal there when you buy the book.
That's awesome. And I'll be linking all of that in the show notes. So just make sure to check that out. And I'm excited for your book because I think there's a lot of theoretical knowledge, but less so experiential accounts of what someone was going through and how they applied it and what they learned and what they were thinking. And I think, for people that are looking to straddle the world of conscious evolution and creating things in the world and, leaving the kind of American dream to do something more aligned. Steve lays it out in his story in the book. So definitely check that out. I know I will be.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, Scott. Yeah, there are a lot of people. We all have opinions, but in my case, my calling to write the book was what do my opinions matter, but what have I done with my life? And I'll just tell everybody the truth of what I did that didn't work and what I did that did work, and maybe strengthen people that are on this journey, because there are some arduous moments. I've shared a few here during this program, and hopefully I can help other people that are on the journey where they come into these same moments.
That's beautiful. Well, thanks again. And thanks everybody for listening. And we will see you on the next show.